At 6:43 in the morning, one text message sliced Jason Whitmore's marriage in half like a sharpened blade. The cruelest part was the calm tone, as if Monica were canceling a dentist appointment. The phone vibrated on the kitchen table and slid slightly under the pale yellow light. Jason was pouring coffee when the screen lit up. One line. No heart, no exclamation mark, not a single decent explanation. Monica wrote, "The plan changed. You're not coming on the cruise anymore. Sophie wants to go with her real dad. Please respect that." Jason froze, like someone had pulled the power out of his body. Coffee overflowed the rim and ran into a brown streak across the placemat, spreading slowly like a stain that would never wash out. Outside the window, Wisconsin snow dusted the front steps. In the yard, a bare maple tree shuddered in the wind. Inside this kitchen, where he had stood for 12 years cooking breakfast, fixing leaks, cleaning up the small broken pieces of daily life, everything suddenly felt unfamiliar. He read the message again, then a second time, then a third. The same words, the same comma, the same cold, casual calm. It sounded like a sentence. No argument, no negotiation, no chance to explain. Sophie wants to go with her real dad. Real dad. Jason flipped the phone face down on the table as if it might bite his hand. He stared at the wood surface where the phone lay silent. A few seconds later it buzzed again, harder, longer, like something underground was trying to claw its way up and tear the quiet apart. Jason did not pick it up. He pulled out the chair and sat in his usual spot at the head of the table. That chair was always his. Not because he was controlling, but because Monica used to laugh and call it his place. She used to say it had the best view of the window, the road leading out to the street, life moving, a family. This morning, that chair felt like a cursed throne. Sit down and you get nailed in place. The radio played the weather report. The announcer spoke evenly about bitter wind and slick roads. Jason heard it without hearing it. In his head, one line kept looping like wire tightening around his chest. You are not going anymore. You are not going anymore. You are not going anymore. The phone buzzed a third time. This time it was not a text. It was a voicemail notification. Jason lifted the phone like someone lifting a heavy stone off his chest and pressed play. Monica's voice spilled out instantly, fast, neat, direct, like she had rehearsed it in front of a mirror. There was no hesitation of someone who had just hurt another human being. Only the irritation of someone who felt inconvenienced. "Jason, do not make this a big deal. Sophie just wants that. You understand? Call me back when you calm down." Calm down. The phrase landed like a slap. Not a slap that hurt, a slap that humiliated. Jason leaned his hip against the counter and closed his eyes. In the darkness behind his eyelids, a memory surged up like ice water poured over his head. Sophie at 7, big eyes, messy hair, folded over the table, crying because she could not understand a math problem. Monica was running late for work that day. The house held only 2 people. Jason had not sat at the head chair. He dragged his chair close to Sophie, set his elbow on the table, and spoke so gently he surprised himself. "It is okay. Read the problem again. I am here. I am here." Sophie had looked up, held her breath for a second, then nodded, tiny and careful, as if one sudden move could make his presence disappear. Jason opened his eyes. The kitchen looked the same, but he was not inside it anymore. The screen lit up with a new message. His heart tightened. It was from Sophie. "I hope you respect our space. Not Dad, not Daddy. Just a polite word, the way you address a distant relative, someone allowed to exist but not allowed to enter." Jason stared at the text until the letters started to blur. He set the phone down. He did not throw it, he did not slam it, he did not curse. He only pushed it a few inches away, like someone nudging aside something hot they no longer want to touch. Somewhere in the world, Monica was getting ready to board a plane. Sophie was packing, and Derek Lane, the biological father who had vanished for a decade, was probably standing in front of a mirror, adjusting his collar like an actor finally invited back onto the stage. Jason could see it clearly, and strangely, he did not feel jealousy. He felt something else, a bare truth. They did not need him anymore, not because he was awful, but because they believed he would always be there, like the floor, like the walls, something necessary but never thanked. And in that moment, a quiet twist happened that no one noticed except Jason. The man sitting at the head of the table, cut from the trip, told to calm down, was not a loser. His name was on everything. This house, this mortgage, these bills, these savings. Monica could carry her cold voice anywhere. Derek could pretend to be a father beneath a sunset on the river, but the real power, the kind that does not need to show off, was sitting in the hands of the man they underestimated the most. Jason took a deep breath, slow, very slow, as if collecting the pieces of himself. He stood, pulled the head chair in tight to the table, straightened it neatly like a declaration, then opened his phone settings and turned off every notification. The kitchen went quiet. But inside that quiet, something was born. Not tears, not rage. A decision. 12 years ago, Monica said one line that made Jason believe he finally had a home. And that same line later became a rope tightening around his neck without him realizing it. The night Jason moved to Maple Grove, snow fell thick like powder. He dragged an old suitcase across the steps, a toolbox in his other hand, his coat dotted with tiny cold grains. The door opened, and warm air washed over his face. Monica stood there smiling brightly, cheeks flushed like she had found the final piece of her life's picture. She leaned in, kissed his cheek, then whispered, light but deep enough to lodge in his heart, "It is just us, me and you, and Sophie, family, family." Jason believed that word like a vow. Sophie was 7 then, skinny, pale blonde hair, messy, 2 socks that did not match. She stood on the staircase hugging a worn stuffed bear, eyes wide, watching the strange man in her house. No crying, no greeting, just watching, like she was measuring whether he would stay. Monica pulled Sophie closer. Her voice was soft, soothing, yet carried something like an order. "Say hello to Dad Jason." Sophie looked at Monica, then at Jason, then murmured, "Hello. Not Dad, not yet." Jason did not blame her. He lowered himself to her eye level, voice low and warm. "Hi. Do you like pancakes?" Sophie blinked, then gave a tiny nod. That first nod felt like a contract without a signature. That night, Monica sat with him on the back steps, a cold soda can sweating in her hand. She told him about Derek Lane, Sophie's biological father. She spoke lightly, like talking about an old rain. He disappeared. Sometimes he called, sometimes he did not. Promised things, then forgot. Sophie is used to it. Jason asked, only to be sure. Is he still around? Monica shrugged and smiled. No, he has no place in my life anymore. We are the family. We. Those 2 words pulled Jason into this house like a role he would never escape. Years passed like days no one wrote down, yet they built a father. Jason drove Sophie to school, stood in the rain waiting for her to run out. He learned the difference between crying from a stomachache and crying because someone teased her. He tied shoes, applied bandages, fixed bike wheels. He became part of her life in the quietest way. One night, Sophie ran a high fever. Monica panicked, hands shaking until she dropped the thermometer. Jason said little. He lifted Sophie, wrapped her in a blanket, carried her to the car. On the way to the emergency room, Sophie drifted in and out, but still clung to his collar, lips whispering, "Don't leave me." The words tightened Jason's throat. He answered immediately without thinking, "I am here. Dad." After that, Sophie started calling him Dad Jason, a half-claim, but to Jason it was the whole sky. Monica changed too over time. Whenever money came up, she wore a certain smile, the kind that made a man feel trusted. When Jason signed the payment plan for Sophie's braces, Monica rested a hand on his shoulder, eyes shining. "Your money is our money." When Jason bought an old sedan for Sophie to get to school, Monica hugged him and smiled like a devoted wife. That is what dads do. And when Jason set up automatic payments for the anniversary cruise, Monica kissed his cheek and said it like a reward. We deserved this. Jason lived on that word like oxygen. He did not realize that every time Monica said it, she was turning it into a hook, hooking him to responsibility, hooking him to obligation, hooking him to that chair at the head of the table, the place he always had to sit to keep the family from collapsing. But the one person who was never allowed to collapse was him. And this was what Jason did not know. A twist had been hiding in the dark for a long time. He thought he was accepted because of love. In truth, he was kept because he was stability. He thought he was a husband. In Monica's eyes, sometimes he was only the man behind the insurance, the bills, the peace. And Sophie, the girl who once clung to his collar begging him not to leave, grew up inside a story Monica repeated every day. A story about a misunderstood biological father, a man robbed of his right to be a dad. Jason never heard those stories. He was busy working, earning, fixing, doing everything to deserve the word family, until this morning, when one message colder than snow said out loud what they had hidden for years: real dad. Jason sat again in the present kitchen, his hands gripping the chair. In his mind, little Sophie layered over today's Sophie, the one who had texted him to respect their space. There, no him. Jason blinked, his breathing heavy as stone. Something broke inside him. Not love, illusion. At 8:17 in the morning, Jason Whitmore still walked out of the house as if his marriage had not just been executed by a text message, and that fake normalcy was the cruelest part. Madison's sky was lead gray. Old snow hardened along the curb, crushed into cold slush by tires. Jason locked the door, held the doorknob a beat too long, as if the house could still hear him, then turned away. His coat collar rose high. His face looked calm enough that anyone passing would think he was only thinking about work. But inside his chest, something was cracking, piece by piece. In the car, the morning news played. A steady male voice read fuel prices. A crash on the interstate. Winter arriving early. Jason heard it without hearing it. Monica's voicemail still echoed, "Call me back when you calm down." He gave a small, soundless laugh. Calm down. As if he were the one causing trouble, as if he were the unreasonable one. He drove into the company lot. The glass building glowed like always. A world run on contracts and numbers. A world with no time for pain. Jason was the chief operating officer of Whitmore Logistics, but few people outside the executive conference room knew it. He did not look like the image of a powerful boss. No polished suit, no flashy car. He wore old leather shoes, a simple coat, and sometimes carried boxes himself when the warehouse was short-staffed. New employees occasionally called him the maintenance guy. Once a security guard even held out a hand and asked whether he should use the back entrance. Jason never corrected them. He let them be wrong. A man with real power does not need to prove it. He walked into the office, greeted a few people with a nod. The coffee pot was still hot. Colleagues joked about a game over the weekend. The world moved normally, steady like the clock on his kitchen wall. Only Jason was stuck at 6:43. His assistant, Mia Caldwell, looked up from her screen. At 28, she was sharp as a needle. She studied him for a second, then lowered her voice. "Are you okay?" Jason wanted to lie and say he was fine, but his throat felt like sandpaper. "Fine," he said, and his voice sounded like someone else's. Mia did not push. She placed a folder on his desk and spoke softly, like laying a blanket over someone trembling. "The partner meeting in Cedar Falls is at 9. They want to finalize the last terms." Jason nodded, opened his laptop and forced his focus onto numbers, growth arrows, cost lines, penalty clauses. Everything looked clean and aligned, easy to control, unlike his life. At exactly 9, Jason walked into the conference room. The partners were already seated with professional smiles. Handshakes, small talk about the weather. Jason matched the rhythm. He talked operations optimization like he had been born for it. But when a man across the table asked, "So, who will sign final approval?" Jason's eyes dropped to the document. His gaze slid over the small print. Signatory. A flash of memory hit, bills at home, the mortgage, the insurance, the name printed on everything. Jason Whitmore. His heart punched once. A lightning clarity cracked through his mind. He was the one who signed. He was the name on the paper. He was the one who carried it. Yet at home, they treated him like someone who could be pushed aside. He was about to answer when his phone buzzed in his pocket, long and urgent, not like a normal notification. He did not look. Seconds later it buzzed again and again, like a hand dragging him back into that cold kitchen. Jason kept running the meeting. He read terms, confirmed numbers, nodded, initialed, and when a partner joked that his boss must be stressed because his face looked as cold as winter, Jason gave exactly 1% of a smile and said winter really is cold this year. If they knew the truth, they would understand it was not winter outside. It was winter inside his chest. The meeting ended. Jason returned to his desk. The phone kept buzzing. He did not look, but irritation rose under his ribs like water under ice. Finally, when the room cleared, he pulled the phone out. 3 missed calls from Monica, 2 voicemails, 1 text from Sophie, 1 short sentence. "I hope you do not make this awkward. Please respect us." Jason stared without blinking. It felt like someone had erased a word from his name. Not dad, not father, just a man expected to respect, an outsider. He set the phone down. His hand trembled slightly. He inhaled and swallowed the lump in his throat. In another office, Monica was probably preparing to board a plane, standing before a mirror, fixing her hair, telling herself she was right. In her mind, Jason was easy, always yielding, never making a scene, always understanding. Sophie was growing up, wanting a perfect family photo in front of her friends. She was torn in a real way. Jason had raised her, but Derek was the man she could call real dad in public, and Monica kept feeding her the idea that this trip would be Derek's chance to make up for everything. Sophie believed it, or wanted to believe it. Derek, meanwhile, was enjoying being back on stage. He would smile and say things were finally in the right place. He did not know that in the same city a man was waking up, a man they thought would stay silent forever. Jason stood, walked out to the parking lot at noon. The wind cut his face like a blade. He sat behind the wheel, shut the door, and let silence fall. In the cabin, his breathing sounded loud and precise. He did not call a friend, he did not call his sister, he did not call Derek, he did not beg for explanations. He stared straight ahead, then started the engine and drove away. Not home, not to family, toward a truth he had avoided too long. Sometimes a quiet man is not quiet because he is weak, but because he is calculating. And when he begins to act, no one will be able to stop him in time. At 3:12 in the afternoon, Jason Whitmore sat in the parking lot of a gas station and let the phone ring until it died. In the silence that followed, he understood something brutal. No one was calling to apologize. They were calling to control him. The station sat beside the highway, its sign glowing even though it was not dark yet. Dirty snow had hardened into black streaks around tires. Inside his car, the engine idled. Warm air pushed steadily from the vents. Yet Jason's back felt ice cold, like someone had placed a stone there. The phone buzzed. Monica. He watched her name on the screen, then set the phone into the cup holder like it could burn his hand. The ringing kept going. Stubborn, like a knock from someone who believed she had the right to enter any time. Jason did not answer. The call ended. A short silence, heavy. Then the phone buzzed again. Sophie this time. Jason closed his eyes. He saw her face from years ago, standing on the stairs hugging a teddy bear. Then he saw her face now, hard and distant, texting him to respect their space like he was a stranger. He did not answer. He let it ring all the way to the end. When the second call died, the air inside the car thickened. The radio had been off for so long he could not remember turning it off. Only the engine's low hum remained, the wind tapping lightly on the glass and his own breathing. Jason sat still for a few seconds. Then a strange laugh pushed up in him. Not joy, bitter disbelief. For 12 years, he had answered every call. He had always been the one to pick up first, the one to show up first when something went wrong, the one to stay quiet first when he was misunderstood. And, in return, one day, they picked up a phone and erased him from their lives with a few words. He pressed the gas a little harder and pulled out of the station, straight toward Maple Grove. The drive home cut through quiet neighborhoods. Houses glowed warm behind windows. Cars rested in driveways. Small footprints crossed snow in front yards. Jason watched it like a movie he once starred in, now recast without warning. When he turned onto his street, the familiarity felt cruel. The old Christmas tree still leaned in the corner of the porch, not put away yet. The doormat that said "Home" lay in its usual place. Everything still said this was his house, but inside it was empty. Monica had left early. She had prepared perfectly, like a public relations professional. The bed in the master bedroom was made flat and tight like a hotel. Pillows aligned. Not a strand of hair, not a trace of rushing. Jason stood in the doorway and stared at that bed, and it felt like someone had wiped his existence clean. He went down to the kitchen. The dining table was there, the head chair was there. It waited like a silent witness. Jason sat. The other seats were empty, chairs like shadows. He imagined Monica and Sophie stepping onto a cruise deck, wind lifting their hair, sunlight flashing on a glass, while Derek Lane leaned on the railing like he had earned that place with sweat and sacrifice instead of timing. Jason could see it so clearly his chest tightened. Then the phone buzzed. A message from Sophie. "I hope you respect our space." That was all. No, "Are you okay? No, I am sorry." Just one sentence like a door being shut. Jason stared until his eyes burned, but he did not cry. He did not slam the table. He only flipped the phone face down and pushed it a few inches away, like pushing a knife that still carried blood. In Sophie's mind, when she sent that message, she believed she was doing the right thing. She thought she was protecting her mother from questions. She thought this trip would give Derek a chance to make things right, let her friends see a complete family. Sophie did not realize that in one short line, she had erased 12 years. Monica, at the airport, was surely telling herself Jason would cool off soon. He would stop, like he always did. He always stopped. Because Monica had gotten used to Jason being the floor. No one thanks the floor. People only step on it. But today, Jason was not the floor anymore. He sat for a long time listening to the radio talk about river levels, trains leaving and returning. A voice pretending life always has a route back, and Jason understood. This was not about a cruise. This was a boundary they had been drawing quietly for years, inch by inch, in every photo where he stood slightly off to the side, in every time Monica said, "Your money is our money," in every time Sophie called him Dad Jason like a promise she refused to fully make. Today, they simply said it out loud, and in that cold kitchen, Jason felt a terrifying clarity rise inside him. Not loud, not fiery, cold, sharp, steady. He stood, pulled the head chair tight to the table, pushed it in neatly like putting away something that had finished its job, then picked up his phone and turned off every notification. Not because he was afraid, but because he needed something he had not had in years. Silence to decide. And somewhere, on the future cruise deck, Monica and Sophie still believed they had won a small negotiation. They had no idea they had just given Jason the space to become someone else, someone who would no longer ask permission to be loved. At 10 in the morning the next day, Jason Whitmore's hands started trembling right in the middle of his office like a confession he could not hide. No one could see the wound inside him, so his body spoke for him instead. He forced himself to stay calm for a few more minutes, trying to finish reading the spreadsheet open on his monitor. The numbers ran down the screen like a heartless train. Fuel costs, late delivery rates, quarterly profit. Those things used to make Jason feel in control. Today, one single message from Monica had crushed everything he believed in. He typed a sentence into an email, then deleted it. Typed again, deleted again. His fingers felt stiff and heavy. His heartbeat no longer followed logic. Mia Caldwell walked over and placed another folder on his desk. She saw his hands. The trembling was small, but impossible to hide. "You need a break," she asked quietly. Jason inhaled deep. There was an empty cold space inside his chest. "I need to step out for a minute," he said. He did not explain. He did not apologize. He simply stood, grabbed his coat, and walked down the long hallway. The fluorescent lights above were harsh and white, turning his reflection in the glass doors into someone else, a man who had not slept. A man drained dry, a man still walking straight. Outside in the parking lot, the Wisconsin wind hit hard like it wanted to tear away every soft thing he had left. Jason got into his car and started the engine. He did not turn on the radio. He needed silence, clean silence, without Monica's voice spilling into his thoughts like smoke. The car turned off the main road and headed toward Lakeview Credit Union. The place had existed before Monica, before Sophie, before the Maple Grove house. Jason had opened his first account there when he was still a young warehouse manager, sleeves always stained with grease, boots coated in dust. The bank's glass door opened with a small bell. Warm air and the smell of printed paper met his face. Everything looked clean and orderly, as if life could be rearranged with files. The teller looked up. Her name tag read Martha Klein. She smiled the way she always did. "Good morning, Jason. What can I help you with today?" Jason saw her eyes, the familiar look of someone who had watched him grow across the years. For a moment, he almost said the truth. "I need to know who stole my life." But he did not. He only nodded, his voice steady enough to fool even himself. "I want to review all my accounts, everything, and all automatic transactions." Martha did not ask questions. She guided him to a private desk, pulled the monitor closer, and typed quickly. Lines appeared: checking, savings, mortgage, autopay. Jason stared at the screen like it was a map of himself. Each automatic withdrawal was a slice of his life. Mortgage payment at the start of each month. Electricity, water, car insurance, home insurance, internet. Sophie's most recent tuition payment. Then, like a bright nail hammered into his eyes, the cruise payment. A steady schedule. Smooth. Precise. Every single item under the name Jason Whitmore. Not Monica, not Sophie, not Derek. Jason's stomach tightened. But at the same time, something else rose in him, clear as ice breaking underfoot. Real power did not belong to the person who got to go on the cruise. It belonged to the person paying for the cruise. Martha glanced at him without speaking, but she saw his face turn pale, saw his jaw lock. "Everything okay, Jason?" Jason nodded. His words came out like a thin blade. "I am just checking to be sure." Martha printed documents. The printer whirred and rattled. Hot sheets slid into the tray. Jason picked them up and felt the warmth of paper and ink. It was not paper. It was evidence. He flipped through more pages. And then he saw something he did not expect. Small transfers, not huge, but consistent. Too consistent to be random. From the main account to another account labeled Sophie Lane. Jason narrowed his eyes and scanned the dates. Each transfer had a reasonable label. living expenses, books, personal money. But the pattern, quiet and steady, carried a different smell. The smell of secrecy. Jason did not explode in anger. The terrifying thing was how calm he felt. A cold calm. Like when he looked at a pallet collapse in the warehouse and instantly knew exactly what to do next. Martha did not know what was happening inside his family, but she sensed a shift, the way Jason stood straighter, the way his eyes sharpened. She handed him another printout. "Do you want more detail on these transfers?" Jason nodded, lips pressed tight. Yes. In his mind, he saw Monica at the airport. Sophie beside her, Derek smiling easily. Monica would say in that sweet fake voice, "We are family. What kind of family moves money in secret like a plan?" Jason tucked the papers into a folder and thanked Martha. His voice remained polite, but underneath it, steel was forming. Back in the car, he sat with the documents on his lap. His hands were no longer shaking. The wind outside remained cruel, but inside the car his breathing was even. He stared at numbers, dates, automatic withdrawals, and he realized something simple. Sometimes a person does not need more emotion. A person needs truth. The truth was he was not kicked off a cruise. He was kicked out of a family. The truth was Monica did not simply change a plan. She was rewriting history. She was rewriting the story so Derek became the hero, and Jason became the man who should just understand. And the final truth, the one that hurt the most and made him the strongest, Jason held the real key to every door. Not the house key, the key to the numbers. He sat still for a long moment and watched snow drift across the windshield. Each snowflake melted and vanished without leaving a trace. Jason would not vanish anymore. He started the engine. This time he knew exactly where he was driving. Not to apologize, not to beg, but to begin a new life, where respect was not something he had to plead for. At 8:49 that night, Jason Whitmore walked into a veterans bar like a man who had just escaped a fire. Except there was no smoke on his clothes. The burn was inside his chest. Outside, Madison felt cold as stone. Wind whipped through the parking lot, dragging tiny shards of snow that tapped against the glass. The sign, the anchor post, hung loose, its dim red light spilling over oil-stained concrete. Jason paused at the door, his hand resting on the handle a beat longer than normal. Not from hesitation, but because he did not want to carry the cold inside him into a place where people could see it. He opened the door. Noise hit him at once. Not loud music, but human sound. Hoarse laughter. Glasses knocking against wood. Old stories told in new voices. The smell of fried onions, beer, wet winter coats. The ceiling was low, the lights warm. Flags and unit photos covered the walls. A place where men did not ask too much. They recognized each other with their eyes. Jason walked to the bar and took the last seat at the end. He did not choose the center seat. He was not ready to become a story. The bartender nodded. Jason ordered a beer. His voice was level. A minute later, the glass slid in front of him, foam rising like a thin layer of cloud. Jason watched the foam and thought of the bank ink on those papers, thought of cold numbers, thought of how everything became clear when emotion was forced to step back. He lifted the glass and took a sip. The bitterness spread through his mouth. Bitter, real, not gentle, not fake. Like truth. At the far end of the bar sat an older man who looked like part of the place itself. No introduction needed. Everyone knew him. Frank Malloy. A former serviceman. White hair, broad shoulders, heavy coat, a worn navy cap, eyes that had seen worse things than a man being abandoned. Frank glanced at Jason. Just one glance, like a blade passing over. Then he stood, dragged a chair closer, and sat beside Jason without asking permission. "You look like hell dressed up as a man," Frank said. Jason gave a small laugh, no joy in it. "It feels worse," he answered. Frank stared at the beer, then at Jason's face. He did not ask about family in a polite way. He asked like giving an order. Talk. Jason inhaled. He had planned to say nothing, but sometimes silence was no longer strength. Silence was only choking himself. He did not tell everything. He told just enough for Frank to understand the direction of the wind. The morning text, the cruise, the sentence Sophie wants to go with her real dad, the calmed-down voicemail, the calls buzzing like claws inside his pocket. Jason spoke slowly in the parts that hurt, faster in the parts where he felt cornered. When he repeated, "Respect our space," his mouth tightened. When he said real dad, his eyes went dark, like a light switched off. Frank listened. He did not nod dramatically. He did not sigh for effect. He listened, like reading a battlefield report. When Jason stopped, Frank took a sip, set the glass down. The way he set it down was firm, like stamping a decision. "You want to know the worst part?" Frank asked. Jason looked at him. Frank spoke evenly, cold. People do not change. They only become more honest when they think they have already won. The sentence landed on the bar like a stone. Not loud, but it sank everything. Jason stared into his beer. The foam had nearly disappeared. The surface was dark gold, still. He pictured Monica at the airport, sitting straight, smoothing her hair, looking at Sophie like a small victory. Derek would smile, like life had finally handed him something back. Jason breathed out, long, then spoke quietly. "I do not want to make a scene. I do not want to destroy everything." Frank tilted his head, old eyes sharp, then stopped standing there to catch the falling pieces. Jason frowned. Frank placed both hands on the bar and leaned in. His voice dropped lower, each word like a nail. "Do not keep building your life inside a house where they hold the key. Build something new, somewhere they cannot open the door." Jason heard that and felt like a door had opened inside his mind. Not a door back to Monica. Not a door to Sophie. A door out of the role. He remembered Monica saying "we." Remembered how she used that word like rope. Remembered the bank documents in his lap. Remembered the power he held without using. Frank was not finished. "You are afraid of being seen as the bad guy, right?" Jason did not answer, but the question hit clean. He was afraid. Afraid Monica would paint him as selfish. Afraid Sophie would hate him. Afraid neighbors would talk. Afraid the whole world would look at him like the man who got left behind. Frank gave a short, bitter smile. The bad guy is the man who disappears after never doing anything for anyone. That is not you. You have done too much. You are not abandoning them. You are taking back what belongs to you. Taking back. Two words that burned on Jason's tongue. Not revenge, not punishment. Just taking back. Somewhere in the bar, someone laughed loudly. Someone told an old story. Life kept moving. But Jason felt himself standing at a turn. In Monica's head, if she knew Jason was here, she would call it drama. She would say he was being extra. In Sophie's head, she would think Dad Jason was just drinking to cool off, then tomorrow, everything would return to normal. They did not know. Jason was not here to cool off. He was here to wake up. Frank tapped the bar once. Not comfort, a command. "Go home," Frank said, "and look hard at what you built. For the first time in your life, ask yourself, do they deserve to keep the key?" Jason finished the beer. The bitterness remained, but now it made him clear. He put money on the bar and stood. Before Jason left, Frank added one more line, like the final cut. "Do not yell, do not beg, do not argue. Your name is on it. You decide. Stay quiet and work." Jason stepped out of the anchor post. Wind slapped his face, but strangely he no longer felt as cold as before. He looked up at the dark sky, watched snow drift like ash, then let out a breath. Something had changed inside him, not the pain, his position. A man who did not need permission to be respected, A man about to build a new door, and this time they would not have the key. The filing cabinet drawer yanked open with a sharp metal screech, as if the house itself did not want Jason Whitmore to see what had been buried inside. The most terrifying part was that everything had been there for a long time. He simply had never dared to look. The small room beside the bedroom was called a guest room, but in truth it was only where Jason stored things. A worn wooden desk, a yellow lamp, and a heavy metal cabinet that felt cold as ice. Jason stood in front of it for a few seconds, his hand on the handle, like he was about to open a door into raw truth. Then he pulled hard. The drawer slid out. Files were stacked in layers, perfectly aligned in a way that felt almost obsessive. Jason had always been the kind of man who kept paperwork, not because he was suspicious, but because he was responsible. His father used to say that a man cannot always control emotions, but he must control evidence. When life turns ugly, paper speaks for you. Jason once believed that rule belonged to business. He now understood it belonged to marriage. He began flipping through folders, plastic sleeves, printed pages, tiny letters stabbing his eyes like needles. Sophie's orthodontic file. The name Sophie Lane printed clearly. The payer section read Jason Whitmore. His signature sat in the corner, firm, steady, never shaking. He stared at it and remembered that day Sophie sat in the dentist chair gripping Jason's coat, lips tight from fear. Monica stood behind her and spoke softly, like praising a child. "You really are an amazing father." Jason had smiled back then, thinking he was being seen. He turned the next file. Car repairs. The old sedan he bought for Sophie to drive to school. Winter tires, a new battery. A transmission repair that forced him to pull money out of savings. Jason remembered that week. He skipped lunch for days, not because he was broke, but because he believed he should punish himself for spending too much, as if love itself required payment. He kept flipping. Tuition receipts, payment after payment, nothing glamorous, nothing loud, just steady, like the heartbeat of a man who was never allowed to collapse. Then Jason stopped. Because across all those documents, Monica almost did not exist. Her signature was rare, like an out-of-season snowflake. She was present in their life through smiles and words, while he was present through signatures and payments. One person performed, one person paid. Jason swallowed hard. His chest felt heavy, but his hand did not stop moving. He opened the more recent file stack. Bank statements, transaction summaries. This was the section Jason used to avoid. Not because he feared the numbers, but because he feared what they proved. He scanned line by line. Then he saw it. Small transfers, not huge, but regular. Regular enough to never be accidental. Money moved from the main family account into an account under Sophie's name. Some months once, some months twice. The dates were clean. The notes were polite, as if whoever did it was trying to turn secrecy into something normal. Jason dropped into the chair. The chair made a hard clunk, like 12 years of weight had been slammed onto it. He said nothing, but one thought flashed through him like electricity. Why hide it? If this was really family, if it was really us, why hide it? Jason leaned closer and studied the pattern. Those transfers never appeared in the conversations Monica had about money. She kissed his cheek when she talked about the cruise. She held his hand when she said we deserved this. She always made him feel like he was the center, while quietly she was building a separate road. For Sophie, and maybe for Derek. Jason reached deeper into the drawer, into the section he rarely touched. He found a white envelope that was not sealed. No name written on it, only one short word in pen. Travel. He pulled it out. Inside was the cruise booking confirmation. What froze Jason's blood was not the amount. It was the passenger list. Monica Whitmore, Sophie Lane, Derek Lane, no Jason. Jason stared like he had been punched straight in the chest. Not jealousy, something worse, the shameless truth. That morning, text was not a plan changing. The plan had existed before. They only said it out loud now, once everything was ready, neat, rewritten, like a story where he did not exist. Monica did not remove Jason in one morning. She had removed him a long time ago. Jason let out a short, dry laugh, not madness. The laugh of a man stepping out of an illusion. In another city, Monica would be wearing a nice coat, pulling a suitcase, texting Sophie that everything was fine. Sophie would tell herself she was only finding her real dad. Derek would deliver some righteous line, something about the family finally being in order. They would believe Jason was merely the one left behind. They would not understand. Jason was sitting in the middle of paperwork, in the middle of cold, printed truth, and for the first time he could see the power he had never used. Not the power of yelling, not the power of slamming tables, the power of being the name on the paper. He laid the travel envelope on the desk beside the transfer statements. 2 pieces side by side, 2 puzzle parts locking together. The full picture formed with brutal clarity. Jason picked up his phone. The screen glowed with 3 missed calls. He did not answer. He did not need to. He opened his contacts and searched for the cruise hotline number. His finger pressed each digit slowly, like signing a decision. A woman answered on the other end, her tone polite, scripted. "Hello, how may I assist you?" Jason spoke low and firm. "I want to cancel the booking." She asked for the reason. Jason looked down at the papers, looked at his signature, looked at the space where his name had been erased. He answered, "Because I am no longer a passenger. In more ways than one." She paused, then returned to procedure. Jason listened, answered briefly. Confirmation, booking code, payment information. Everything moved smoothly, coldly, the American system at its purest. No emotion, no pity, only results. The call ended. Jason set the phone down. The room held only the soft hum of the lamp. He sat for a long time. Emotion did not explode the way Monica would have expected. It settled, dense, heavy, and strangely, it gave him a calm he had never owned inside this marriage. Jason gathered the documents and stacked them straight, neat, like a man preparing for war without hate, only truth. Then he closed the drawer. The cabinet screeched again, but this time the sound did not feel like a warning. It felt like a door locking shut. Locking the past. Opening a new road where Jason would no longer ask permission to exist inside his own story. The first thing the lawyer said made Jason Whitmore understand that his life was not collapsing because he had been abandoned. It was collapsing because he had allowed someone else to believe they had the right to own him. Starting today, that right would be revoked. The law office sat on the 2nd floor of a red brick building near downtown Madison. Not luxurious, not flashy, just clean and quiet. The kind of quiet where people cut a life in half with paperwork. Jason walked in feeling like he was entering a surgical room. No blood, but blades. The attorney, Evan Price, was younger than Jason expected. Early 30s, shirt sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, a desk crowded with stacked files like small graves. Evan looked at Jason without curiosity, only assessment. "Sit," he said, then reached for the folder Jason brought. Jason did not pour out emotions. He did not need to. Evan flipped through pages fast. Home ownership, mortgage details, the name on the title, the cruise cancellation proof, the transfer statements. Evan read like a soldier checking a map. In Evan's mind, this was not a tragedy. It was a case file. That cold distance made Jason feel lighter because when emotion stepped aside, truth stood straight. Evan set the stack down and looked at Jason. "I will be direct. The house is in your name only." Jason blinked, even though he had already confirmed it at the credit union. Hearing it from a lawyer still hit like a hammer on steel. "You can sell it," Evan continued, "completely legal if you want to." Jason stayed silent. his fingers gripping the chair edge. In his mind, he saw Monica standing at the front door, key in hand, face confident. She believed it was her home, Sophie's home, the family home. She believed Jason was only a temporary figure inside the frame, a man who could be pushed out when he no longer fit. Evan seemed to read that thought. He added, dry and precise, "She can live there. Living there does not mean owning it." Jason heard his own breathing, slow and heavy. In that moment, he understood a major twist was about to overturn the entire story Monica and Derek were trying to write. They thought they were pushing him out of the family, but on paper, they had never had the right to push him out. They were demanding something that was never theirs. Evan leaned back, watching Jason like a man about to make a big decision. "Do you want me to handle this gently?" Jason looked up, gently. Evan nodded. "We can talk, negotiate, but I will be honest. In cases like this, the other side rarely leaves quietly. They drag it out, they get loud. They use emotion as a weapon." Jason's throat went dry. He pictured Monica's voicemail. "Do not make this a big deal, you understand." And suddenly he realized Monica was not afraid of his anger. She was afraid of his awakening. In Monica's mind, if Jason met with a lawyer, that would be betrayal. Not her betrayal of him, but his betrayal of the role she assigned him. The good husband, the substitute father, the provider, the quiet man. Evan tapped his pen against the paper. "You have real power," he said, "but I'm guessing you're not used to using it." Jason looked down at his hands. These hands had carried Sophie into the emergency room, fixed pipes, lifted boxes in warehouses, signed paper that fed an entire household. He had never called it power, only responsibility, but responsibility can be used as a leash. And sometimes power must be used to cut the leash. Jason spoke low. "If I sell the house, what happens?" Evan answered immediately. "No detours." "She will be shocked, angry. She will blame you. She may try to sue. But with this documentation, they will have a hard time overturning it." Jason heard every word. Shocked, angry, blame, sue. His hands did not shake any more. He did not fear that scene. He saw only one truth. For the first time, Monica and Sophie would feel what it meant to lose control. Evan stood and offered his hand. "If you decide, I will support you. But decide for yourself, not for revenge, for your dignity." Jason stood and shook his hand. The handshake was firm, clean, no extra emotion, no extra words. When Jason stepped back outside, cold wind hit his face. Madison still buzzed with traffic. People passed each other. No one knew a man's entire life had just been redirected by one simple sentence. "The house is in your name only." Jason stood on the sidewalk for a few seconds, watching weak sunlight reflect off parked cars. In his mind, he saw the head chair at the table, the chair he had sat in while holding everything together. And he understood. All these years he called it patience, but in truth it was permission. Permission for them to disrespect him. Permission for them to use him and brush him off. Jason inhaled deeply. For the first time in days, that breath did not smell like despair. It smelled like a decision. Tomorrow he would make another phone call, and that phone call would change everything. That call did not make the house collapse. It made an entire life collapse in silence, clean and neat, like paper being folded shut. Jason Whitmore waited exactly 1 day before making it. Not because he hesitated, but because he needed to hear his own thoughts without Monica's voice pouring over them like smoke. Silence had a strange power. It forced the truths people try to avoid to appear as clearly as headlights in the dark. Jason stood in the kitchen, staring at the dining table and the head chair. He did not sit down. He stood. He drank coffee standing, as if sitting might pull him back into the old role, the man who endured everything just to keep the peace. He opened his contacts and tapped a number. Diane Holloway, a real estate agent in Madison. a woman Jason had met once at a neighborhood gathering. Diane had sharp eyes and a polite smile, the kind of woman who could look at a house and immediately know what it was hiding. The phone rang twice. Diane picked up. "Jason, is that you?" she said at once, recognizing him. "I want to sell the house," Jason said, direct and blunt. No small talk. The line went quiet for a beat. Then Diane switched into business mode, tight and fast. Address, Jason gave her Maple Grove. Diane did not ask why. She did not ask about family. That was what Jason needed, someone who did not dig, someone who simply worked. 2 days later, Diane stood at his front door holding a notebook. She stepped inside like a doctor entering a patient's room, scanning the whole first, then touching details. Jason followed behind with both hands in his coat pockets. He looked at the house the way a person looks at something that once belonged to him but was already slipping away. Everything seemed smaller than he remembered. The walls felt lower. The hallway felt shorter. The living room suddenly looked like an old stage that had hosted too many fake scenes. Diane tapped lightly on a wall, examined the windows, checked the kitchen counters. "The home is well kept," she said. "You took care of it." Jason did not answer, because that was the problem. He had taken care of it, and they had been taking care of something else. Their emotions, their image. The story they told the world, a story where Jason was only a footnote. Diane stopped in the bedroom and looked at the perfectly made bed. "Does your wife know?" she asked gently. Jason stared out the window. Snow in the yard glittered like broken glass. "She is traveling," he said. "I will handle it." Diane nodded. She did not smile. She understood the weight inside that quiet. "We can list quickly," she said. "But I have to warn you, if the other side reacts, it will get loud." Jason turned to her. His eyes were no longer exhausted the way they used to be. They were cold and steady. "I am used to noise," he said. "I just do not want to live inside it anymore." That night, Jason started packing boxes. Not the whole house, not like he was moving immediately. Just the things that belonged to him. Work clothes, a few old books, important documents. He moved slowly but neatly. Each item placed into a box felt like a clean cut, separating. The phone buzzed on the table. Monica's name lit up like a red stain. Jason stared for 1 second, then left it alone. It rang again and again. The buzzing was so strong the phone slid a few inches across the wood. Monica's voice rang in his memory, the same controlling tone. "Do not make a big deal, you understand." Jason did not answer. He let it go to voicemail. A notification appeared, then another. He listened to only one message, just one. Monica's voice was no longer soft. It was sharp as glass. "Jason, stop this. You are embarrassing me. Derek is here. He says you are overreacting. Derek." The name came out like a slap. Monica said Derek as if he belonged beside her, as if he had the right to judge Jason. Jason powered the phone off. Not silent mode. Off. In that same moment, somewhere on the river, Monica was probably laughing. She would think Jason was sulking and would calm down soon. He always did. And Derek, the man who disappeared for years, was enjoying the role. He would nod like a wise father and say something about family. He had no idea real family was written on paper, not spoken into the air. Sophie, too, at that age, when a perfect photograph matters more than a complicated truth, would assume Jason would return to the old position. The man at the head chair, the one who paid, the one who stayed quiet. But they were wrong, because at that exact time Diane's message arrived, short and clear. Someone wants to view the house. Then a second, then a third. A week passed, and Maple Grove had unfamiliar footsteps crossing the living room. Different shoes on the rug. Different voices praising the light through the windows. Jason was not home during the showings. He did not want to see his home measured like merchandise. He did not have the strength to perform politeness while his heart felt torn open. Diane called one afternoon. "We have an offer," she said. "A young couple, Ben and Alyssa Morales. They are approved for a mortgage. They need to move in before the end of the month. Alyssa is pregnant." Jason stayed silent. Something strange rose inside him. A baby about to be born in this house. A new family. A new beginning. Not for Jason and Monica, but for people who had never hurt him. Diane continued, hesitant. "They want to negotiate a little on the price." Jason looked at the head chair. He looked at a small scratch near the chair leg. A mark from when Sophie once kicked it in a teenage tantrum. Jason had fixed it back then. Jason always fixed things. He exhaled. "Accept it," Jason said. Diane paused. Then her voice softened. "Are you sure?" Jason answered, each word landing like nails into wood. "I am sure. I want it to end fast, clean, real." That night, Jason sat alone on the living room floor among cardboard boxes. No music, no radio, the house held its breath. He thought he would feel empty. Instead, he felt light. Light, like a man finally putting down a heavy backpack he had carried for years while no one noticed. Outside, snow fell quietly, steadily, without drama. Jason stared through the window and thought some revenge does not need shouting. It only needs a signature, and a man who finally knows who he is. The door did not open, and in one single second Monica Whitmore understood that some things in life cannot be screamed back into place. That afternoon, a taxi stopped in front of the Maple Grove house. Monica stepped out first, white coat, oversized sunglasses, hair curled like she had just returned from a photo shoot. Sophie followed, dragging a suitcase, phone in hand. Derek Lane stood beside them, expensive jacket on his shoulders, an easy smile like a man who believed he had won an argument. In Monica's mind, this scene was supposed to be different. The house should have opened to greet them. Jason should have been in the kitchen, tense but quiet like always. Monica would sigh, offer soft excuses, and the story would be folded back into the shape she wanted. She climbed the steps, inserted the key, turned it. Nothing. Monica frowned and turned harder. The door stayed dead. She froze for a beat, then laughed, short, forced. "The lock must be stuck," she said, trying again. Sophie stood behind her, eyes moving quickly around the yard. She noticed the flower pot by the porch had been changed. The doormat was different. A tiny detail, but enough to make her stomach sink. Derek shrugged casually. "Maybe Jason changed the locks to punish you." Monica spun toward him. He would not dare. The words flew out like reflex. Not because Monica believed Jason was kind, but because she believed he belonged to the kind role. She had framed him that way for too long. Monica slammed her hand on the handle. Hard. Repeated. "Open up," she shouted. "Jason." No answer. No footsteps, no radio, no clinking dishes. The house was silent like it no longer recognized her. Sophie swallowed. She remembered evenings when Jason sat in the head chair waiting for them to return late, dinner cold but untouched. Sophie used to think he was weak. He only waited. Now, as she faced a door that would not open, she realized that waiting was not weakness. It was restraint, and restraint has an end. Monica yanked out her phone and called Jason. It rang. No answer. She called again. No answer. Her face turned red, not from cold, but from losing control. She glanced around. A neighbor's curtain twitched. A car slowed to watch. Monica hated being seen like a joke. She turned to Derek. "What are you standing there for? Go knock on the back door." Derek shrugged and walked around. But near a side window, he stopped short. Inside, he saw different furniture, stacked boxes, new curtains, and the shadow of a stranger. Derek hurried back, voice low. "Monica, there's someone inside." Sophie jolted. Her phone almost slipped from her hands. Cold ran down her spine. Monica gave a sharp laugh like the idea was impossible. No. Then, in the next instant, the door cracked open. Not the main door, but an inner barrier. A young man stood behind it, the safety chain still latched. He looked at them politely but alert. "Sorry, what do you need?" he asked. Monica froze. Then she snapped into attack mode fast as instinct. "Who are you? What are you doing in my house?" The young man blinked. "Your house." He did not smile, he did not mock. He simply spoke slowly. "We moved in this morning. I am Ben Morales. This is my wife." A pregnant woman stepped behind him, one hand on her belly like protection. Sophie saw her and her heart tightened. She realized this was not confusion. This was real. Monica stepped forward, voice rising. "No, this is my home. My husband is Jason Whitmore." Ben stayed calm. He pulled up his phone and opened a photo of legal documents, voice still steady. "We signed a legal contract. We have paperwork. It is notarized." Monica stood rigid. Wind slapped her face, but the true cold was inside her chest. Derek began backing away. His easy grin was gone. He did not want legal trouble. He only wanted a cruise. Sophie looked at her mother, then Derek, then the house, and she suddenly felt small again, like the 7-year-old on the stairs, except this time no one would carry her away from fear. Monica started screaming. "Call the police. Call now." Ben nodded. He did not argue. He simply closed the door again with the chain locked and called. 15 minutes later, a police car arrived. 2 officers walked onto the porch. One, older, tired-faced, like he had seen too many family disasters to be impressed by drama. One younger, hand on a notepad. Monica talked nonstop, rapid, about her husband, her home, betrayal. The older officer asked one simple question. "Whose name is on the deed?" Monica went silent. Only a beat, but it was enough to make everything collapse. Sophie watched her mother fail to answer for the first time. Derek lowered his head, and in that moment, Sophie understood a twist she had never considered. The man she told to respect their space, the man she assumed was weak at home, might have been the only one who truly held power. Somewhere out there, Jason was living his life, quietly. And this silence was no longer endurance. It was a strike. Jason Whitmore answered on the 4th ring. Not because he softened, but because he wanted them to hear a truth no one could deny. In a roadside diner, the coffee in front of him had gone half cold. The air smelled of pastries and bacon, the calm smell of people who did not have a war inside their home. Outside the window, a truck rolled past, tires grinding through snow like sandpaper on paper. Jason's phone buzzed on the table. Monica. He stared for 1 second. His heart still hurt, but the pain had been pushed beneath a layer of steel. He picked up. "Hello?" Monica exploded like fireworks. "Jason, what did you do? Are you insane?" Her voice broke and snapped from heavy breathing. In the background, Jason heard a man speaking over her. Definitely Derek. And farther back, the silence of Sophie like a throat being squeezed. Jason leaned back and looked toward the parking lot. A man loaded groceries into his car like nothing in the world mattered. Jason spoke slowly, cleanly. "I sold the house." Silence struck the other end. Silence so thick Jason could hear wind through the microphone. Then Monica fired back. "You cannot do that. That is our home." Jason swallowed. His throat burned, but he refused to let it become shouting. He had already screamed enough in life, only he screamed inside. He replied, each word hitting like a hammer. "It is my house. You only lived in it." The sentence cut like a blade. Monica choked, then switched into another voice, the crisis management voice. She stopped arguing right and wrong. She moved straight to threats. "I will sue you. I will ruin your peace. You know what I can do." In Monica's mind, Jason was still the man in the head chair, ready to apologize to keep things calm. The man bent by guilt. She had used that weapon for years. Say you embarrassed me, he would step back. Say Sophie is hurt, he would soften. But today, Monica pushed into a wall. Jason did not answer threats with threats. He simply said, terrifyingly calm, "Do it." Monica froze. She was not used to that calm. She was used to Jason explaining, begging, proving, asking for another chance. Derek's voice pushed in louder now as if he grabbed the phone. "Hey, Jason, you are going too far. This is Sophie's home too. She needs stability. You are the adult. Act like it." Jason let out a small laugh, not happy. Derek. The name in Jason's mouth sounded like accusation. Derek paused, clearly disliking being spoken to that way. Jason continued, slow, slicing masks away layer by layer. "You say she needs stability. Where were you the last 12 years? When she needed tuition. When the car broke in winter. When she had a fever and I carried her to the hospital. When she cried because you did not show up." Derek snapped into defense. "I had reasons. Jason cut him off, fast and final, leaving no room for Derek's victim performance. "You had no reasons. You only had a habit of disappearing." The line went heavy. Monica tried to take the phone back, voice shrill. "Jason, stop bringing up the past. It is not relevant." Jason stared at his coffee. He turned the mug slightly, like turning a memory. "It is relevant," he said. "Everything is relevant. Because you said Sophie wants her real dad. Fine. Then let her real dad pay. Do not make me fund the love story the two of you are trying to sell." Monica went silent. Not because she understood, but because he stabbed the place she hid. Then Sophie's voice appeared, so light it sounded like wind through a crack. "Dad Jason." Jason closed his eyes for one beat. One beat was enough for memories to flood him. Sophie tiny, gripping his collar, begging him not to leave. Sophie now, calling him with a name that was both close and distant. He opened his eyes. "Yes." Sophie spoke, her voice breaking on the first word. "I did not think you would really do it. Not screaming, not blaming. Only that one line. And that made it hurt more than anything." Jason replied slowly, firm. "You did not think I was serious, did you?" Sophie did not answer. Jason continued, voice lower, like speaking to himself. "I also did not think you would truly say I do not belong in your family anymore. But you said it. Monica said it. So now we are simply living according to what you chose." Monica screamed in the background, calling Jason's name like it was a dirty word. Derek muttered something about cruelty. But Sophie was no longer hearing them. She was hearing Jason. For the first time, she was hearing a Jason who did not apologize. Sophie exhaled, trembling. "Dad, do you hate me?" The question froze the air. Jason stared out the diner window. Snow continued falling. Slow. Quiet. No one inside this diner knew a father and daughter were standing on a cliff. Jason spoke, each word dropping like stones into deep water. "I do not hate you." He paused, one breath. "I am just in pain." In Sophie's mind, the image of Jason in the head chair waiting for dinner flashed up. She remembered him paying tuition quietly, driving her to buy books, pretending not to hurt when she said she wanted to see Derek. Those memories stacked into a choke in her throat. Jason continued, his voice no longer sharp, but deep. "I raised you. I did not rent a place in your life. I was there. Real. Every day." Silence stretched on the other end. Monica wanted control, but Sophie was not repeating her mother anymore. She only breathed, like someone finally hearing truth without cotton in her ears. At last, Sophie whispered, I did not know everything." Jason answered immediately, "I know." He did not need her apology right now. He did not need her to come back right now. What he needed was the truth to be faced. He delivered the last line, firm, but not cruel. "If you want to talk, talk when you are ready to listen, not when you need me to be the background for your choices." Then he ended the call. Not to be cold, but because if he stayed one more second, he feared he would weaken again. feared he would slip back into the old role. Jason set the phone down and took a sip of coffee. The bitterness felt stronger now, sharper. But inside that bitterness, he felt something he had not tasted in years. Freedom. Somewhere, Monica was screaming. Derek was cursing. Sophie was crying silently. But Jason, the man they had underestimated the most, had stepped out of the frame they built for him, and he would not step back in. No gavel struck, no one stood to clap. But with one question from a mediator, Monica Whitmore lost everything. And Jason Whitmore won without raising his voice. The letter arrived on a Friday afternoon. Thick paper, cold printed words. Jason received it in his small rented apartment near Lake Mendota. A new place. A small table made for one. A window facing bare trees. He skimmed the legal lines, then laid the letter down like setting aside a weight he had expected for a long time. Monica did not file for divorce right away. She chose to attack the house first, as if reclaiming it would rewind time, erase the humiliation of standing outside her own front door with a useless key. Jason was not surprised. He simply breathed out. The Scott County Courthouse was an old building that smelled of damp paper and disinfectant. It made people speak quietly, not from fear, but because it felt like every word would be recorded inside the walls. Jason wore the blazer he reserved for funerals and serious client meetings. Not fancy, not new, but clean and straight. He carried a manila envelope under his arm, heavy with documents and heavier with memories. Each step through the hallway was steady, like a man who refused to return. Monica arrived late. Her heels clicked on tile as if she could create power through sound. She wore a long coat, perfect makeup, red lipstick, eyes sharp. Sophie followed, hair tied back, face pale, both hands gripping her phone like a life ring. Derek Lane walked behind them with hands in pockets, relaxed like he was entering a bar, not a place where truth gets cut open. Monica stared at Jason like he was betrayal. Derek stared at Jason like he was a man who needed to be taught a lesson. Sophie stared at Jason like he was a memory she did not know where to place. The mediator was a woman in her 60s with reading glasses on a chain. Her voice was low. Her eyes had seen too many broken families to believe in drama. "We keep it simple," she said. "Today is only about property." Monica lunged into it immediately, like she had rehearsed all night. "He abandoned us," she said, pointing at Jason like pointing at dirt. "He sold the house behind my back. My daughter was humiliated in front of the neighbors. The whole neighborhood stared at me like I was stealing my own home." Monica's voice climbed higher and higher. She spoke of sacrifice, love, promises. She shaped Jason into the villain while presenting herself as the perfect victim. Derek nodded along, occasionally adding a word or two like stamping approval, trying to frame himself as a man with authority. Jason stayed still. That was the hardest part, letting their words stack into a mountain without reacting. But he had learned this in warehouses, in boardrooms, in family fights. The one who speaks first does not always win. The one who stays calm controls the rhythm. The mediator lifted a hand. "Mr. Whitmore," she said, "your turn." Jason stood. He placed the manila envelope on the table. The sound was not loud, but it was firm, like a brick set into foundation. "I did not abandon anyone," Jason said. His voice was so calm even Monica paused. "I simply stopped paying for a life I was not allowed to belong to." Monica sneered. "Money is not everything." Jason looked straight at her. "You also said that, until the money was mine." Silence dropped into the room. Jason opened the envelope and pulled out documents like a surgeon. No anger, no shaking, only precision. The deed, one name, Jason Whitmore, the mortgage statements, the regular payments, utilities, insurance, tuition, repairs. Then the cruise documents, passenger list, Monica, Sophie, Derek, no Jason. Sophie stared at the table. Her throat tightened. In her mind, the cruise had been a dream family photo. Now it looked like a knife in the man who raised her. The mediator put on her glasses and read the pages one by one. She did not rush. Her slowness made truth heavier. Monica began to lose patience. "That is his technique," she snapped. "He manipulates with paper. But I am his wife. I lived there. It is our home." The mediator looked up, voice even. Living there does not mean owning it. "The documents clearly state the property was solely under Mr. Whitmore's name," Monica stammered. "But we are married." The mediator nodded slightly. "Marriage does not automatically change ownership on paper. That is the law." Derek leaned forward, sensing a chance to play hero. "I am the biological father," he declared. "Sophie deserves that house. He cannot sell it like that." Jason turned toward Derek for the first time. His gaze was calm, almost cold. "Really?" Derek frowned. Jason continued, short and hard. "Where is the child support money?" The entire room froze. Derek's easy smile died like a light being unplugged. His mouth opened, but no words came. Jason slid another document onto the table. He did not raise his voice, but every word nailed itself down. "I have records of what you never paid. Late tuition, lapsed insurance, emergency repairs. I paid all of it." Sophie lifted her head, eyes red. She looked at Derek like looking at a truth she was never allowed to see in her own house. Then she looked at Jason, and her gaze was no longer cold. It started to crack. The mediator closed the file. Paper tapped paper dry. "There's no legal basis to challenge the sale," she said. "The transaction was valid. We are done here." Monica sank into her chair like bones had been removed. She wanted to scream, but there was nowhere to scream into. Derek stepped back like he feared getting dirty. Sophie stared at her hands like she no longer knew who she was inside this story. Jason did not smile. He did not feel triumph the way revenge fantasies pretend it feels. He only felt light. Outside, sunlight hit the courthouse steps, bright and sharp. The air was cold, but clean. Jason inhaled deeply, like breathing in a new life. Sophie stepped out last. She stopped a few steps behind him, voice small and shaking. "I did not know. I did not know everything." Jason nodded. "I know," he said. "But knowing now still matters." Sophie wanted to say sorry, but the word jammed in her throat because it was too heavy. She only nodded, eyes wet. No hug. Not yet. This relationship had to be rebuilt from zero, like learning to walk across thin ice. Jason walked to his car alone. The envelope in his hand felt lighter now, lighter like a burden placed where it belonged. In the days that followed, he lived in his small apartment. Mornings, he watched the lake. Nights, he cooked simple meals. No one called him asking to calm down anymore. No one demanded he understand anymore. Silence became something he chose, not something forced onto him. Monica sent an email about mail forwarding and a bill she believed he still owed. Jason forwarded it to his attorney without response. No explanation. He no longer needed to prove he was the good man. A good man does not need their permission to be good. Sophie texted once in autumn. "Just one sentence, can we talk?" Jason looked at the message for a long time, then replied, "Yes, when you are ready to listen." They met at a coffee shop between their neighborhoods. Sophie looked older, more tired, but also more real. She spoke in a rough voice. "I did not know Mom was transferring money. I did not know you paid that much." Jason looked at her. No blame, no anger, only a calm gaze. "I am not keeping score," he said. "I kept my promise." Sophie lowered her head. "I was wrong to text you about respecting our space. I thought it would be easier if everything was simple." Jason replied slowly. "Simple for the one who is not paying the price." That line made Sophie cry quietly. No screaming, no drama, just tears from a girl who finally saw the truth. They hugged once, short and clumsy, not a perfect ending, but a real beginning. and Jason understood that was the deepest victory. Not selling the house, not winning in court, but taking back his dignity. If you have ever been erased from your own family, treated like a floor people can step on, remember this: love without respect is only labor, and silence, when chosen, can be power. If this story touched you, leave a comment. What would you do if you were in Jason's place? Press like to support the channel and subscribe to Final Text for more life stories and emotional twists where the underestimated stand up and reclaim themselves.